It was a rainy evening when the Sharma family returned home after another day of endless struggles. The father, Rajesh, had been jobless for months. His wife, Meera, worked long shifts at a tailoring shop, yet the money was never enough to cover rent, food, and the mounting debts. Their teenage children, Aditi and Arav, pretended to stay strong, but they often overheard their parents' late-night arguments about money. Hope had almost left the house. As Rajesh unlocked the gate, Aditi noticed something unusual near their doorstep. A wooden box, small but carved with strange, almost ancient patterns, sat silently in the rain. It didn't look like anything ordinary. The wood was dark, polished, and strangely untouched by the water, as though the rain avoided it. Aditi bent down, brushing her wet hair from her face, and lifted the box. It wasn't heavy, but it felt alive. "Papa, someone must have left it here," she said softly. Rajesh frowned, scanning the empty street. No delivery man, no neighbor in sight. Just the sound of thunder rolling in the distance. He muttered, "Probably junk someone dropped. Bring it inside." Inside, they placed the box on the old dining table. Arav, the curious younger brother, immediately tried to pry it open. With a little push, the lid creaked, revealing a velvet-lined interior. There was nothing inside except for a golden plate fixed to the inner wall, etched with words that seemed to shimmer faintly under the flickering bulb. "Make a wish, and it shall come true. But beware, for every gift, a life you love will be taken." For a moment, the family was silent. Meera chuckled nervously, shaking her head. "What nonsense. Probably some stupid prank toy." Arav grinned. "What if it's real? Imagine, I could wish for a new bike." Rajesh snapped, his voice tired. "Enough. We've got real problems to deal with. This box won't pay our bills." He slammed the lid shut, trying to dismiss it, but Aditi kept staring at it. Something about the words lingered in her mind, echoing deeper than a prank. The storm outside grew harsher, lightning flashing through the cracked windows. Every flicker of light seemed to make the box glow faintly, as though it was feeding on the tension in the room. Meera covered it with an old cloth and pushed it aside, but even under the fabric, they all felt its presence. Later that night, as the family tried to sleep, Aditi lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She could still hear her parents whispering about overdue rent, about the landlord threatening to throw them out. She thought of her grandmother, sick and bedridden in the next town, unable to afford proper medicine. She thought of her brother's torn shoes, her father's weary eyes, and her mother's trembling hands from endless work. Her gaze shifted to the covered box sitting in the corner of the room, silent but alive, as if waiting. A thought crept into her mind, dangerous but irresistible. What if the box was real? What if one wish could change everything? And in that quiet, storm-lit night, the first seeds of temptation were planted. Friends, if this story touches your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more heartfelt tales. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the streets washed clean, but inside the Sharma household, the weight of the mysterious box still lingered. Covered with cloth and pushed to a corner, it seemed harmless in the daylight, yet Aditi could not get it out of her mind. Her parents had left early, her father to chase another job interview that would likely end in rejection, and her mother to the tailoring shop where she would sew until her fingers ached. Aditi sat at the dining table, staring at the box, her younger brother Arav sitting beside her. "Do you think it's real?" Arav whispered, his eyes sparkling with childish curiosity. Aditi didn't answer. She was torn between logic and desperation. Logic told her it was just an empty box with carved words, nothing more. But desperation, that voice was louder. Their landlord had already warned them, 3 more days, or you're out. Their grandmother's medicines were running out, and there was no money left. A single wish could fix it all. That evening, after the family ate their modest meal of rice and lentils, Aditi could no longer resist. As everyone prepared for bed, she slipped quietly back into the dining room, her bare feet making no sound on the cold cement floor. The box sat there, waiting, as if it had known she would return. Her hands trembled as she pulled away the cloth and lifted the lid. The golden plate shimmered faintly, the words almost alive, "Make a wish, and it shall come true. But beware, for every gift, a life you love will be taken." Her voice quivered as she whispered, I wish for money. Enough to save my family." For a moment, nothing happened. Just silence, and the faint ticking of the old wall clock. Aditi felt foolish, her heart racing for no reason. She was about to close the box when a sudden gust of wind blew through the room, though all windows were shut. The bulb flickered violently before steadying again. Terrified, she backed away, but the box had gone still, as if nothing had happened. She hurried to her room, convincing herself it had been her imagination. But the next morning, Rajesh opened the door to find a heavy sack lying on their doorstep. When he unzipped it, his eyes widened. It was filled with bundles of cash, crisp and real. The family froze in disbelief. Mira gasped, covering her mouth. Arav laughed with joy, shouting, "We're rich." Only Aditi stood frozen, her chest tightening with dread. She knew it wasn't free. That evening, as the family celebrated with rare happiness, the phone rang. Rajesh picked it up, his face going pale as he listened. The receiver slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. Mira rushed to him, alarmed. "It's Ma," Rajesh whispered, his voice hollow. "She's gone. She passed away suddenly." The room fell silent. Aditi's heart sank. She remembered her grandmother's gentle smile, her frail body still clinging to life just yesterday. Tears welled in her eyes as the realization pierced her soul. The box had kept its promise. They had gained money, but it had taken someone they loved. And though no one else knew, Aditi understood with horrifying certainty, it was her wish that killed her grandmother. The Sharma household was wrapped in mourning after the grandmother's sudden death. The funeral was simple but heavy with sorrow. Rajesh barely spoke, Mira cried silently at night, and Aditi carried a guilt she could not share. Only Arav, too young to fully understand, tried to cheer everyone with childish jokes, though even his voice carried a quiet sadness. But grief soon began to blur, overtaken by something darker, temptation. Despite the tragedy, the sack of money remained. It was real, untouched by suspicion. The rent was paid, debts cleared, and medicines purchased. For the first time in months, the family ate well, the weight of poverty lifted. Rajesh, however, could not ignore the gnawing thought that had been haunting him ever since he saw that golden plate inside the box. What if I made a wish for myself? He had spent years working hard, only to be rejected by employers who didn't even look him in the eye. His pride as a father was bruised, his dreams crushed. That night, as Mira and the children slept, Rajesh sat alone at the dining table, staring at the box. The golden inscription almost seemed to glow in the dim light, whispering to him. His hands shook as he placed them on the lid. His breath grew heavy. "I've worked all my life," he muttered bitterly. "If one wish can give me a chance, why shouldn't I take it?" He opened the box and whispered with trembling lips, "I wish for a job. A good job, with respect, with money, something that will make me a man again." The bulb above flickered, the air turned unnaturally cold, and the box gave a low creak before falling silent once more. Rajesh sat frozen, sweat rolling down his forehead. Then he laughed nervously, shaking his head at his own foolishness. But the next morning, the phone rang. Rajesh answered, and his eyes widened. A major firm had reviewed his old application. Suddenly, they wanted to hire him, immediately, with a high salary. His joy was overwhelming. He hugged Mira, who wept with relief. For once, their home filled with laughter. But Aditi's stomach twisted with fear. She knew this happiness carried a price. And it came that very evening. A phone call from the police shattered their brief joy. Rajesh's closest friend, Mahesh, his childhood companion, his brother in all but blood, had been killed in a freak car accident. The news hit Rajesh like a knife. He dropped the receiver, his knees buckling, his face drained of all color. Mira clutched his arm, sobbing, while Aditi stood in the corner, trembling. She knew it was no accident. The box had taken its due. That night, the family sat in silence. The new job meant their future was secured, but the air was heavy with dread. Each of them tried to convince themselves that the deaths were coincidences, that life was cruel anyway. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. The box was real, the wishes were real, and the price was real. Yet, even with that knowledge, a dangerous seed had begun to sprout. If one wish could bring money, another a job, what else could it give? Greed had entered the house, and it would not leave. The days following Mahesh's death were heavy with silence. Rajesh went to work in his new position, his salary now more than enough to support the family. But behind his proud eyes lay torment. Every time he sat at his desk, he saw his friend's smiling face, remembered their childhood games, their shared struggles, and the way Mahesh had always stood by him. That memory now carried a bitter truth. It was Rajesh's wish that had stolen his friend's life. Mira noticed the change in her husband, but she herself was slowly drowning in her own temptation. For years she had lived in shadows, her hands raw from sewing clothes for others, her body weary from constant labor. The mirror in her room reminded her of the youth she had lost. The once radiant woman she had been was now replaced by lines of struggle and exhaustion. And every time she walked past the covered box, she felt its whisper tugging at her heart. One night, while everyone slept, she quietly uncovered the box. The inscription gleamed softly, almost inviting. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, I wish to be young again. To be beautiful once more. The air shifted, the candle flickered, and the box shut itself with a sharp thud. Mira froze, terrified, but when she touched her face, her skin felt smoother. By morning, the mirror revealed the impossible. Her wrinkles had faded, her hair regained its shine, and her body glowed with the radiance of youth. She cried, not from fear, but from joy. Rajesh stared at her in disbelief, stunned by her transformation. Arav clapped in wonder, thinking it was magic. But Aditi's heart sank. She knew what this meant. That evening, the phone rang once again. Mira's younger sister, with whom she shared countless childhood memories, had died in her sleep. The shock tore through her like a dagger. Her wish had stolen her sister's life. The beauty in the mirror now felt like blood on her skin. But the box's hunger was not finished. Days later, Arav, naive and dreaming of acceptance, sat alone with the box. At school, he had always been the quiet boy, unnoticed, often mocked for his worn-out shoes and shabby clothes. Now, with the shimmering promise before him, he whispered eagerly, I wish to be popular. I wish everyone at school would admire me. The next day, his wish came true. He walked into school and was suddenly the center of attention. Teachers praised him, classmates crowded around, and for the first time, he felt important. His smile beamed with newfound pride. But when he returned home, their neighbor rushed over with news. Arav's best friend, the boy who had always stood by him, had been killed in a freak fall from a rooftop. The joy on Arav's face melted into horror. He realized too late what price had been paid for his popularity. The house of the Sharmas grew richer, younger, and more admired, but it was also emptier, hollowed out by loss. Every mirror, every possession, every smile came with a shadow of death. And slowly, the family began to crumble, not from poverty anymore, but from the unbearable weight of their own wishes. The Sharma household was no longer the same. Their small, struggling home had transformed. New furniture filled the rooms, expensive clothes hung in the wardrobes, and the table that once held only rice and lentils now carried feasts. Outwardly, they appeared blessed, but beneath the surface, the family was shattered. Rajesh sat in silence most nights, staring at his hands, as if trying to wash off the blood of his friend's death. Mira, though glowing with youth, avoided mirrors. Each reflection reminded her of the sister she had unknowingly killed. Arav, once playful and carefree, now sat in his room for hours, refusing to speak, haunted by the loss of his best friend. And Aditi, she bore the heaviest weight of all, for it was she who had first awakened the curse of the box. The golden chest still sat in the corner, covered with cloth, but its presence loomed over them like a ghost. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of the bulb reminded them of its silent hunger. One night, a fierce storm shook the town again. Thunder rolled across the sky as if echoing the turmoil inside their home. The family gathered in the living room, the box between them, no one daring to touch it. The rain battered against the windows, the air heavy with unspoken fear. Rajesh finally broke the silence, his voice trembling. We must destroy it. This thing has given us nothing but death. But what if it doesn't let us? Mira whispered, clutching her shawl. Her youthful face looked terrified, almost childlike. Aditi stood, tears streaming down her cheeks. We should never have touched it. Every wish was a curse. We've lost more than we ever gained. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Rajesh grabbed the box, lifted it high, and tried to smash it against the floor. But to their horror, the box did not break. It hit the ground with a metallic thud, intact, unharmed, as if mocking their helplessness. The golden plate shimmered faintly in the dark room, the inscription glowing brighter than ever. Suddenly, the lights flickered out. The room was swallowed by darkness. A low creak echoed, and the box's lid opened on its own. The family froze, their breaths shallow, as the shadows of the storm seemed to dance around it. And then, just as suddenly as it had come into their lives, the box vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only the cloth that had once covered it lying on the floor. The Sharmas were left in silence, shaken, broken, and terrified. They had everything they once dreamed of: money, youth, success, popularity, but they sat surrounded by emptiness, the people they loved most buried in graves. Their home, though filled with riches, felt colder than ever. Far away, in another quiet town, the box reappeared. On the doorstep of another struggling family, it sat patiently, waiting. Its wood gleamed against the rain, its golden inscription promising miracles to anyone desperate enough to believe. And so, the cycle began again. The chilling truth remained. The box never gave, it only took. If this story moved you, please share it, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more stories of love, redemption, and hope.